Let us step into a world where history turned at a different moment, where a single act of faith in a brilliant mind rewrote the entire century to come. Imagine a world not of roaring furnaces and belching smokestacks, but of a soft, pervasive hum. A world lit from the air itself, powered by the dreams of one man, fully realized. The point of divergence is not a dramatic battle or a political coup, but a quiet conversation in a Manhattan office on a rain-slicked afternoon in 1899. The air is thick with the smell of ozone and wet wool. J.P. Morgan, having just funded Tesla's Wardenclyffe laboratory, sits across from the inventor. Tesla speaks, his eyes fixed on a middle distance only he can see, of a global system of wireless power transmission. He describes a world interconnected, illuminated, and energized without wires, without coal, without the need for 1,000 competing utilities. Morgan, a man who built empires on copper and steel, is listening. He sees not philanthropy, but a new kind of empire, control over the very medium of energy itself. He sees a monopoly more absolute than any railroad or steel trust. Very well, Tesla, Morgan says, his voice a low rumble. You shall have it. Unlimited credit. Make your world system. He extends a hand. The rain taps softly against the window pane. The agreement is sealed. The 20th century pivots on that handshake. The first ripples are subtle. At Wardenclyffe, on Long Island, the strange wooden tower grows taller, a skeletal sentinel against the sky. Instead of running out of funds in 1905, the work continues. Methodical, relentless. By 1910, the first successful transmission of electrical power without wires is achieved. Not a dramatic burst, but a steady, resonant flow of energy that lights a bank of bulbs planted in the earth 20 miles away. The news is met with skepticism, then dawning awe. The hum begins. It is a low-frequency vibration, felt in the bones more than heard, a gentle background resonance that becomes the new silence of the modern age. Consequences unfold like the turning pages of a well-ordered book. The first and most profound is the quiet obsolescence of the electrical grid as we knew it. No more forests of wooden poles crisscrossing the landscape, trailing their black wires against the sky. No more coal-fired plants staining the air over cities. Instead, great resonant towers, elegant structures of latticework and copper, rise in key geographical nodes, in the plains of Nebraska, the hills of Scotland, the deserts of Arabia. They are called Tesla 4s. They do not broadcast signals, but rather they set the very earth itself into a gentle harmonic oscillation. Any properly tuned receiver, a simple coil of wire embedded in the foundation of a home or integrated into the frame of an automobile, can draw power from this planetary field. Energy becomes a public utility in the truest sense, like air. It is metered not by consumption, but by a modest universal access fee, a foundational tax that funds the maintenance of the Tesla 4 network. Politically, the world reshapes itself around this new reality. The great geopolitical struggles of the early 20th century are softened, their edges blunted by the absence of an oil imperative. The Ottoman Empire, its vast lands, now hosting critical Tesla 4 stations for the Eastern Hemisphere, undergoes a different, slower transformation, modernizing under the gentle pressure of international energy consortiums rather than collapsing in war. The combustion engine, while it exists, becomes a novelty, a sound for racetracks and hobbyists. Cities grow quieter. The air above London and Pittsburgh slowly clears, the grime of centuries beginning to wash away in the rain, revealing soot-darkened bricks that will, over decades, be cleaned or replaced by lighter, airier architecture. This is the world into which Alara Voss is born in 1925 in a small farming town in Iowa. Her ground-level story is one of gentle wonder. From her earliest memory, there is the hum. It is the sound of her world, a constant, reassuring presence like a heartbeat. Her family's farmhouse has no power lines. Instead, a polished copper receptor, shaped like a flattened spiral, is mounted on their roof, gleaming in the sun. At night, the glass orbs in their rooms glow with a soft, edgeless light. Telsa luminaries, filled with argon gas, excited by the ambient field. There is no on switch. The light simply is, dimming and brightening with the natural cycle of dusk and dawn, regulated by a simple photosensitive crystal. Alara's father uses an electric tractor, its batteries perpetually topped up by the hum as it sits in the field. The most profound change for Alara is in the sky. At night, it is not a black void, but a canvas of subtle shimmering waves. The aurora borealis is visible much further south, a permanent gentle dance of ionized particles excited by the global resonance. She falls asleep watching the silent, rippling colors from her bedroom window, a nightly lullaby of light. As the decades progress, the technological evolution branches in unexpected, peaceful directions. Without the need for compact, combustible fuel, transportation focuses on efficiency and harmony. Electric airships, powered by the same ambient field and silent as clouds, become the dominant mode of long-distance travel, floating between cities like great, graceful whales. They cast slow-moving shadows over patchwork fields and forests, their only sound the whisper of the wind against their silver skins. Trains, levitated on electromagnetic cushions derived from Tesla's early experiments, glide between population centers on silent single rails. Culturally, a new aesthetic emerges, resonant modernism. Architecture favors curves over sharp angles, flowing forms that harmonize with the energy fields. Buildings are made of conductive composites and specially treated glass, designed to amplify and modulate the hum into pleasant, localized tones. A city street becomes a symphony of subtle frequencies, each structure contributing its own note to the urban chord. Music itself evolves, incorporating these electromagnetic harmonies. Composers write for the etherphone, an instrument that translates the planet's resonance into audible melodies. The Cold War in this timeline is a chill, not a deep freeze. It is a competition of resonance quality and coverage, not missile counts. The space race is different. With limitless wireless power beamed from planetary Teslaphores, rockets are not constrained by the weight of chemical fuel. By the late 1960s, a joint American-European consortium establishes a permanent rotating habitat at the Lagrange point between Earth and the Moon. It is not built from hauled-up modules, but from sintered lunar dust, fabricated by giant silent Tesla furnaces powered from Earth. The goal is not flags and footprints, but the construction of a solar system-wide power and communication network, the next step in Tesla's vision. Alara Voss grows up to become an etherscape artist, designing the resonant profiles of public parks and gardens. In her work, we see the emotional heart of this world. She spends her days tuning arrays of buried crystals and copper filaments, shaping the local energy field so that it encourages specific feelings, a corner of calm reflection in a city square, a path of gentle exhilaration in a botanical garden. Her tools are oscilloscopes and tuning forks. Her canvas, the very air. She remembers the old stories of her grandparents, of the dark, wire-strung world before, and it feels like a tale of a distant, impoverished age. The greatest luxury of her world is not wealth, but clarity. Of air, of purpose, of a night sky alive with benevolent energy. The century turns. The hum is eternal. Wars of resource scarcity are relics of a forgotten, irrational past. Global conflicts are replaced by symphonic competitions and collaborative megaprojects, like the bridging of the Bering Strait with a resonant causeway that harmonizes the energy fields of Asia and North America. Medicine advances through focused resonance therapies. Communication is instantaneous, a side effect of the power carrier wave. The individual is never truly disconnected, never truly without power, in any sense of the word. Yet, it is not a utopia without texture. There is a quiet, pervasive nostalgia for fire, for the crackle of a true wood blaze, which becomes a cherished ritual experience. Some remote communities, by choice, live in dead zones, using old generators, cherishing the silence and the tangible effort of creating their own power. The world is not perfect, but it is calm. Its problems are those of harmony and balance, of philosophical direction, not of desperate survival. And so, as our window into this world begins to close, we see it as a single integrated organism, pulsing softly with the rhythm Tesla imagined. The great inventor, who lived to a ripe old age overseeing the dawn of his system, is remembered not as a tragic genius, but as the architect of modernity's foundation, his face on the global currency of energy credits. The 20th century in this timeline was not an age of roaring engines, but of a spreading, resonant peace. It was a century of turning on no switches, of plugging in no cords, of simply existing within a field of boundless, gentle power. The moonlight, on any given night, seems to shimmer with a sympathetic glow, and the tides of human progress have flowed in a smoother, quieter channel. Thank you for exploring this alternate history with us. Ilara's world was one of soft edges and resonant harmonies, but it was sown in the quiet moments between the hum that she felt its truth most deeply. She remembered, as a child, pressing her palm to the warm copper receptor on the roof of the farmhouse after a summer rain. The droplet-studded metal would thrum against her skin, a tactile whisper of the vast, invisible network that cradled her continent. Her father would point to the western horizon, where the slender silhouette of the Des Moines Tesla stood against the sunset like a cathedral of pure function. "That's our anchor," he'd say, his voice calm with certainty. "So long as it sings, we have light, we have warmth, we have motion." This was the faith of her age, not in deities, but in coherence, in a system that worked. Her artistic path was a natural flowering of that faith. While other children dreamed of piloting silent airships or tuning the great municipal resonators, Ilara was fascinated by the microcosm. She would spend hours in the wildflower meadow behind the barn, using her father's old field meter to measure the subtle variations in the ambient energy. She discovered that a patch of lavender had a slightly different frequency than the grass, a calming violet shimmer in the etheric field. She learned that the old oak tree at the property line acted as a natural amplifier, its root system channeling the hum into a gentle, grounding pulse. The world to her was not a static picture, but a living, vibrating composition. She left Iowa in 1947, not on a roaring train or a smog-belching bus, but on a regional glide car. It was her first time on the electromagnetic levitation line. The experience was one of profound serenity. There was no clatter, no roar, only a faint rising tone as the car accelerated, lifting a finger's breadth from its guide rail. The landscape unfurled outside the panoramic window like a silent film, fields tessellated with green and gold, the occasional farmhouse with its gleaming copper spiral, all under the vast, shimmering dome of the sky. The only sound was the whisper of air and the quiet conversation of her fellow passengers. She arrived in Chicago not with a jolt, but with a decrescendo of sound, the glide car settling onto its pad as softly as a leaf. The Chicago of this world was a masterpiece of resonant modernism. Gone were the soot-stained monoliths of another timeline. In their place, rose buildings of flowing organic forms, clad in coppery alloys and resonant ceramic tiles that changed hue with the angle of the sun. The city's signature structure was the Great Lakes Teslafor, not a tower, but a vast circular array of graceful arches on the Lake de Cosman, designed to harmonize with the freshwater's unique conductivity. The hum here was not a monotone, but a chord, a deep foundational C from the Teslafor, overlaid with the higher melodic frequencies of the buildings. Walking down Michigan Avenue was like moving through the chambers of a colossal, gently singing instrument. Alara studied etheric design at the Tesla Institute, a campus of low, domed buildings where the very corridors were tuned to a frequency conducive to focus. Her mentors were not just artists, but geophysicists and ethicists. She learned to map ley lines of natural resonance, to calculate the emotional impact of specific harmonic intervals, and to consider the philosophical weight of shaping human feeling through environmental tuning. It was a discipline that blended poetry with precision. Her first major commission in 1958 was for a memorial garden in a small town in Pennsylvania that had once been a coal mining community. The town elders didn't want to forget the past. They wanted to heal it. Alara spent months in the archives, reading diaries of miners, studying the gritty, chaotic frequencies of antique machinery. Then she walked the scarred land, now green, again. The garden she created, the deep peace, was her answer. At its entrance, visitors passed through a short tunnel of black, non-conductive stone, a moment of intentional silence, an absence of the hum that felt profound and startling. Emerging, they found a series of rolling hills planted with soft mosses and silver-leafed willows. Beneath the soil, Alara had arranged networks of crystalline filaments, tuned to a slow, restful frequency that mimicked the natural resonance of deep, unmined earth. In the center stood a single polished obsidian plinth, not inscribed with names, but containing a tiny, sealed chamber where a single lump of coal rested on a cushion of velvet. It was a dead zone in the midst of the living field, a pocket of absolute stillness honoring what had been extracted. The garden's resonance was one of gentle, forgiving rest. Visitors often reported leaving with a sense of quiet catharsis, as if the land itself had finally been allowed to sigh. Alara's work took her across the resonant world. She designed a contemplative cloister for a monastery in the Swiss Alps, where the natural mountain frequencies were amplified into a profound spiritual stillness. She collaborated on the Avenue of the Harmonious Dawn in New Delhi, a boulevard where the morning sun, striking phased arrays of glass, triggered a daily rising chord that echoed through the city, marking the start of the day with beauty instead of clamor. She witnessed, too, the gentle globalism of her century. In 1964, she was part of the international team that designed the resonant scape for the Bering Strait Causeway opening ceremony. The causeway itself was an engineering marvel, a series of graceful arched spans that housed massive tuning coils, harmonizing the North American and Asian Teslafor grids into one continuous field. For the ceremony, Alara and her colleagues from Japan, Siberia, and Alaska tuned the causeway's emissions to create a visible, audible phenomenon. As the dignitaries met at the midpoint, the very air above the span blossomed into a complex swirling aurora, and a chord, deep and triumphant, yet utterly peaceful, rolled out across the ice floes. It was a sound of connection, not conquest. Her personal life was interwoven with this calm rhythm. She married a fellow designer, Leo, a man whose specialty was tuning the resonant properties of building materials. Their home in the hills, outside San Francisco, was a testament to their craft. Each room had its own acoustic and etheric character, the kitchen bright and energizing, the library warm and focused, the bedroom a cocoon of restorative, low-frequency calm. Their children grew up with an antique-calcro, unaided understanding of this tuned environment. To them, a poorly resonant space felt itchy or sour, and they could sense the health of a public park by the feeling in their bones. As she aged, Alara began to ponder the subtler textures of her world, the gentle conflicts that defined its humanity, the dead zoners, those who chose to live in the rare shielded valleys where the hum was faint, were often viewed as romantic contrarians. She visited one such community in the Appalachian foothills. They used wind turbines and solar collectors, their lives punctuated by the very silence her world had left behind. They spoke of earning their light, and their nights were indeed black, punctuated only by the sharp ancient brilliance of stars undimmed by atmospheric resonance. Alara found it beautiful, but also achingly difficult. She missed the hum as one might miss a heartbeat. It was a reminder that her world's peace came with a certain uniformity, a pervasive togetherness that could feel to some like a gentle cage. There were also the philosophical debates that reigned in quiet academic circles and cafe symposiums. If the environment could be tuned to produce calm or joy or focus, where did individual agency begin? Was a feeling truly your own if it was encouraged by the air you breathed? Some spoke of resonant determinism, worrying that humanity was being softly guided into a collective mood. Therapists trained in etheric self-definition helped individuals find their internal rhythm amidst the external harmony. It was a problem of abundance, of spiritual navigation in a sea of ease, but it was a problem nonetheless. Alara's later work addressed these questions. Her final major installation, completed in 1995, was called The Choice of Echoes. It was placed in the vast hall of the Global Concord Center in Geneva. The space was empty save for a circle of 12 different portals, each a doorway framed in a different material: copper, oak, quartz, slate, and others. Each portal led to a small, identical antechamber, but each antechamber was tuned to a vastly different emotional resonance, one to agitation, one to serenity, one to melancholy, one to giddy joy. Visitors would enter the circle, sense the differing feels emanating from the doorways, and choose one to walk through. The experience was one of conscious selection of one's emotional environment, a metaphor for the modern condition. It asked the question, now that we can shape how we feel, what will we choose? On a cool evening in 1999, Alara, now white-haired and sharp-eyed, sat in the garden of her home. The automated ether lights were dimming to their evening glow, mimicking the fading sunset. The hum was a constant beloved presence in her chest. Leo had passed a few years before, his ashes scattered in a redwood grove he had tuned for eternal dappled sunlight. Her children and grandchildren were spread across the globe, connected to her not by crackling voice lines, but by the clear, instantaneous resonance of the telepathic carrier wave, a technology that had evolved naturally from Tesla's principles, allowing the transmission of pure thought and image, a communication of such intimacy it had rendered traditional language richer and more poetic, but less necessary for mere facts. She thought of Tesla, the architect. He had lived to see the first global link established in 1937, a frail man of 81 witnessing the final Tesla 4 in the Congo come online, linking the network into a planet-embracing whole. He had died peacefully in 1943, not in a New York hotel room surrounded by pigeons, but in a villa in Belgrade, a city rebuilt as a resonant jewel, attended by a world that revered him as a benevolent patriarch. His face was on the global energy credit, yes, but more importantly, his vision was in the air, in the light, in the quiet pulse of every day. Her granddaughter, Mira, a theorist working on extending the resonance network to Mars, was coming to visit via suborbital glide. Alara thought of the world Mira was helping to build, a solar system slowly being woven into a web of harmonious energy, a process as gradual and inevitable as the growth of a crystal. There were no flags on Mars in this timeline, only the first, softly humming resonator station, its transmissions beginning to stir the thin Martian air into a faint, new aurora. The problems of this world were not small, but they were different. They were the problems of managing wonder, of directing peace, of finding purpose when survival was assured. They were the challenges of a garden, not a battlefield. Weeds of complacency could grow. The desire for struggle, for the tang of true adversity, could manifest as restless creativity, or, in rare cases, as contrived, theatrical conflict in virtual resonance spheres. As the first star, Venus, bright and steady, pierced the luminous, shimmering veil of the evening sky, Ilara felt not a pang of regret for a harsher, more dramatic age, but a deep, settled gratitude. Her century had been one of healing. The scars of the old world, the trenches, the smokestacks, the frantic scramble for oil, were faded ghosts in history books, lessons in a path not taken. She closed her eyes, listening. The hum was there, the deep foundational note of the planet, the higher harmonics of the local towers, the whispering, almost melodic signature of her own garden, her life's work etched into the air. In the distance, she could just sense the subsonic signature of an approaching glide, a new frequency entering the local chord. It was a symphony, imperfect, alive, and endlessly complex, but it was a symphony, not a cacophony. It was the sound of a handshake in a rain-streaked office, amplified across a century, a single act of faith resonating through time, rewriting the very nature of progress into something softer, clearer, and infinitely more strange. The moon rose, bathing her tuned garden in a light that seemed to vibrate in sympathy, and the 20th century, in all its quiet glory, gently faded into the memory of the night.